We've seen a lot of phones here at MWC, and most of them are really expensive. Like, those foldables are really cool, but they both cost almost $2,000 each. I'm more interested in companies like Xiaomi, which are offering flagship performance at prices which are far more realistic for the average consumer. So this is the Mi 9, their new Android flagship. And based on my first impressions, it's a bit of a beast. So this thing is rocking Qualcomm's Snapdragon 855 processor, their latest and greatest, along with 6 GB of RAM and either 64 GB or 128 GB of internal storage. It's also got a 3,300 mAh battery, which isn't the greatest, but it does support fast charging, and Xiaomi is also offering an optional 20-watt wireless charger, which is one of the fastest in the industry. Now you see it's got this 6.4-inch AMOLED display. It's this very tall 19:6 aspect ratio, and you get that very small sort of teardrop notch at the top. So nothing fancy here. They're not going for the hole punch notch. There's no sliders, no pop-up cameras. It's just you're really sort of, I don't want to say bog standard because it still looks great, but just, you know, the conventional notch. Now, it's running Android Pie, but with Xiaomi's MIUI skin lathered on top. Now, this is usually a little bit controversial. Some people absolutely hate this skin, but I gotta say, coming back to it, it's not as bad, I think, as people say. Yes, there's no app drawer, and that kind of sucks, but going through the settings, looking at some of their apps, which you can, of course, hide away in a folder, it's really not that bad. I mean, it's even got a dedicated Google Assistant button on the side, which you can also remap. Either there's a long press and also a double tap, and you can remap either of those to do other basic tasks. You can't set it to launch just any custom app, but you get it to do things like either go back, launch the flashlight, engage reading mode, for instance, which changes the color temperature of the screen, which is still really useful. And I appreciate that much more than something like the Bixby button on Samsung's Galaxy S line. So where does this phone fall short? Well, there's a couple of things. For one, no surprise, there's no headphone jack. This phone also isn't waterproof. But usually with phones like this, it's the camera where companies really shortchange. But Xiaomi says that's not the case with the Mi 9. Apparently DxOMark has rated this phone a 107 for its photography capabilities, which puts it 4th in the world, and a 99 for video, which is the best video camera phone they've ever tested. Now, I haven't had enough time to see if my own impressions line up with those claims, but if that's true, that's pretty wild. On the back, you've got this 3-camera setup. There is a telephoto at the top, the primary shooter in the middle, a 48-megapixel sensor, that one, and then also an ultra-wide at the bottom. And inside the camera app, it's pretty simple to switch between them. You've got just these 2 buttons there. There's a 1x there. You just tap that and it goes to the telephoto. And just on the bottom left-hand corner, you've got the shortcut to go to the ultra-wide. Now this app has a ton of extra features built into it. There's all sorts of filters and portrait mode, and there's slow motion video, but honestly, I'm not the sort of person that's probably going to use most of that, and if I want to apply filters, I'm probably going to do it through another third-party app, but that stuff is in there if you're interested. So the big thing here is the price. So the 64GB model is starting in Europe for €449. That's undercutting a lot of its competitors, such as OnePlus with the 6T. This phone will be available in 3 colors. I've got here the piano black version, which is easily the most subdued of the 3. Your other 2 options are a blue and a sort of violet. Those 2 have this sort of shimmering effect on the back. As the light touches on this curved rear, you get this sort of rainbow glimmer that appears backwards and forwards. It's really something, and maybe not for everyone, but it certainly makes the phone stand out from some of its rivals. You can even see on that telephoto camera at the top, there's a bit of an accent there too, which matches the shimmer you'll get on those other 2 versions. Personally, I love black phones, especially matte black phones, so I would go with piano black, but if you're someone who wants a splash of color, that's certainly something to consider. Now, this thing is probably never going to come to the United States. Xiaomi doesn't have operations over there, but if you live inside Europe, France, Italy, Spain, and eventually the UK, this is something to consider. You know, if you're in the market for something like a OnePlus, maybe an Honor phone, maybe you're even considering Xiaomi's Pocophone sub-brand, this is definitely in that same sort of ballpark. And yeah, if you're looking for flagship performance, but you don't want to spend 1,000 euros, the Mi 9 is probably something to consider. I'm not going to give it a hearty recommendation just yet because I just haven't had that long with the device, but first impressions are really good. In addition to the Mi 9, we got a chance to see the new Mi Mix 3 5G at their launch event in Barcelona. Of course, 5G is also a really big part of MWC. I feel like it's been a big part of MWC for the last 3 years, but this year they're saying 5G is really happening. There are trials taking place all over the world, and therefore phone manufacturers are getting ready with 5G devices that you can actually buy. Xiaomi's offering is the Mi Mix 3 5G. This is, of course, a successor to the Mi Mix 3 that came out late last year. But this one is coming to Europe, which is a first. It's going to be out in May for 599 euros, which again is pretty cheap, especially in comparison to other Android flagships from companies such as Samsung. Now, of course, the big thing here is that it has this magnetic sliding mechanism. It actually requires a little bit of force to use, but of course it has that very sort of snappy, clicky feel. So this is running on a Snapdragon 855 processor, Qualcomm's latest chipset. And it's also got a modem inside, which of course can take advantage of those 5G speeds. Xiaomi is saying that this can get to download speeds of more than 2 gigabits per second. That's massive, but of course you're going to need a SIM card and some kind of network to take advantage of that. Xiaomi is saying that it has already got partnerships in place with networks such as 3 in the UK and also Telefonica, so that as soon as those 5G speeds are available to consumers, you will be able to access them with a device like this. But otherwise, this is Xiaomi's kind of standard Mi Mix 3 phone. Not much has changed. It's still that 6.3-inch AMOLED display. Because of that sliding mechanism, there's no real notch to speak of at the top. It does have a slight bezel on the top and bottom, but it's really not that noticeable. And around the back, you've still got the fingerprint scanner in the middle. You've still got that 2-camera array on the back. So yeah, this is just a slightly updated version of the Mi Mix 3, but it's the first time that Europeans are going to be able to access this. And as I say, it'll be coming out in May for 599 euros. For everything else on the Mi Mix 3 5G and everything that Xiaomi has to show here at Mobile World Congress, keep checking out Engadget.com and youtube.com/Engadget.